HOA cut down my orchard at midnight, not knowing my night cameras were recording everything. Part 1. You don't forget the sound of silence after chainsaws. It wasn't the roar that stuck with me, though, that still echoes in my mind sometimes. No, it was what came after. That moment when everything stopped, and the only sound was the faint drip of sap from severed trunks, the breeze brushing over what used to be branches, the sudden, hollow quiet of trees that had stood for decades. Gone. I stood there in my pajamas, barefoot, flashlight trembling in my hand, and I didn't cry. Not right away. Instead, I whispered, "You messed with the wrong man." Because what they didn't know, what she didn't know, was that the orchard was never just trees. It was my father's legacy, and I had cameras. My name is Miguel Velasquez, 42 high school chemistry teacher, weekend orchardist, and proud son of Luis Velasquez, a man who could grow lemons in January and make guava trees dance with a flick of his hose. I moved into this old family home in Sycamore Estates 4 years ago. After my father passed, he left me the land, the house, and the orchard he had spent nearly 3 decades tending by hand. Back then, the neighborhood was just starting to gentrify. A few new families, some out-of-state investors. Then came the compliance committee flyers, neighborhood harmony meetings, and finally the laminated signs on corners declaring, "Welcome to the Sycamore Community Living Initiative." A proud covenant-controlled community, which was code for we invented a fake HOA to tell you how to live. At first, I ignored it. I didn't care what color my mailbox was. I just wanted to keep my soil balanced, my drip lines clean, and my father's grafted pear trees alive. But one woman wasn't content to let me grow in peace. Karen. She called herself the interim property steward, whatever that meant. Platinum blonde bob, pink workout shirts with fake HOA logos, and a clipboard that looked like it had ruined lives. I met her on a Saturday morning while trimming back some citrus. She marched up to my gate without knocking. "Sir," she said curtly, "you're in violation of Article 2, Section 7 of the Community Aesthetic Standard." I blinked. "Excuse me, fruit-bearing trees in front-facing lots are considered agricultural blight. They attract pests. We've had raccoon complaints, not to mention the visual clutter." I looked past her to the row of olive green shrubs she insisted were code compliant and said flatly, "My dad planted these trees 30 years ago." She smiled like she'd just stepped on something unpleasant. Well, 30 years ago. This wasn't a curated community. Things change. So do people. I thought, from that moment on, the harassment began. She left fake violation notices taped to my fence, took photos of my yard from the street and emailed them to other neighbors with subject lines like potential infringements. Tried to organize a vote to classify my orchard as non-conforming vegetation. She failed, but the message was clear: I was no longer welcome. Still, I didn't retaliate. I trimmed the trees, kept everything clean, followed city code. I even attended a few of their HOA wannabe meetings just to show good faith. But every time I did, she found something new. You have mulch piles visible from the street. Your fruit bins aren't standardized. Your fig trees drop leaves onto the shared sidewalk. The final straw came when I received an anonymous pest control bill in my mailbox for $317.32 because, she claimed, my loquats were attracting beetles. I laughed. But I also installed infrared night cameras around the entire orchard perimeter, just in case. Then came the night. It was a Tuesday. 2:03 a.m. My phone buzzed a motion alert. I checked the camera feed half awake, saw headlights. 2 people in reflective vests. One of them had something in their hands. I zoomed in. Chainsaw. I bolted out of bed, heart hammering, and ran outside barefoot. By the time I reached the back fence, I saw them, 2 people masked, in all black gear except for the HOA-style vests were halfway through a plum tree. The base had already been cut. I shouted. They dropped the saw and ran, leaving a faint trail of oil and sawdust behind. But the damage was done. 7 trees lay in splintered ruin. My father's lemon tree, The one he'd raised from a cutting brought from Oaxaca lay cracked open like a broken rib cage. I didn't sleep. I poured coffee, backed up the footage, called the police, filed the report, and by sunrise, I had posted 3 things to 3 places: a still image of the chainsaw-wielding vandal on the Sycamore Estates neighborhood Facebook group, a public Google Drive folder titled Orchard Sabotage, full video evidence, a message on the town's community board. Last night, someone tried to erase 30 years of history, but they forgot about the cameras. Stay tuned. It didn't take long for the neighborhood to erupt. By noon, 54 comments. By 6 p.m., it was in the local news. And by 9 p.m., 2 things happened simultaneously. Karen held an emergency HOA compliance meeting in her driveway. A neighbor I barely knew, a nurse named Deshawn, dropped off a pie with a note. "We've got your back." That was when I realized something had shifted. I wasn't just a guy with trees anymore. I was the guy who got attacked for having trees, and people were mad. The next day, the police confirmed the vests worn by the intruders matched the style Karen had ordered custom for the compliance patrol. One of them even had a patch with the letters SCLA, Sycamore Community Living Alliance. I hadn't mentioned Karen in my report, but she had just outed herself. That evening, I received a cease and desist letter, not from a lawyer, from her. It accused me of defamation, incitement, and community destabilization. I laughed so hard I almost fell off the porch, because by then, someone else had already sent me drone footage recorded by a teenage neighbor who flew a recreational drone at night. It showed Karen, standing beside the tree line, giving hand signals to the guy with the chainsaw. That was the end of denial, and the beginning of the storm. Part 2. By the end of that week, my story wasn't just neighborhood gossip, it was local legend. The orchard footage had gone viral. Between the drone video, the night vision footage, and a voice analysis breakdown one of my ex-students posted on TikTok, we hit 100,000 views by Friday night. People were angry, not just at Karen, but at what she represented. The control, the arrogance, the idea that a fake HOA could destroy something living and then demand silence. I wasn't going to stay silent. The morning after her fake cease and desist, I held a press conference, not because I wanted the spotlight, but because I needed the community to see I wasn't afraid. We set up in my driveway. Mr. Lee from down the street brought chairs. Deshawn helped arrange the backdrops, photos of the destroyed trees, security cam stills, and a framed picture of my dad planting the first sapling in '94. I stepped up to the mic, held my father's old garden gloves in one hand, and said they cut down my trees, but they didn't cut down what those trees meant, and they didn't know the orchard was watching back. Then I showed the drone video. People gasped, a few murmured. Then came the applause, not wild or chaotic, but firm, grounded. The orchard had become more than mine. Karen, of course, didn't show up, but she did something worse. She doubled down. The next day, her so-called compliance patrol sent printed letters to half the block. They claimed I had illegally installed surveillance infrastructure, called my garden an agricultural threat, and even said my weaponized storytelling was creating division. Division, she trespassed and chopped down my family's orchard. And now I was the problem. I posted the letter online, captioned it. Nothing says guilt like trying to rewrite the ending. It was shared over 5,000 times. That weekend, something amazing happened. It started with Lexi and Jordan, my neighbors on the west side. They showed up with a gift, a young sapling in a red clay pot. "This is a blood orange tree," Lexi said. "We know it won't replace what you lost, but we wanted to help rebuild." I didn't have words, just tears. Then the next day, someone else showed up. Ms. Adair brought over a bucket of lemon balm cuttings. The elementary school sent over painted garden stones. A group of teenagers came to help haul out the debris and prep new beds. By Sunday night, my yard looked less like a crime scene and more like a movement. We called it Regrow the Grove. Karen, meanwhile, was spiraling. She started showing up to city council meetings, demanding the footage be removed from public records, claimed the drone footage was illegal aerial spying, accused me of falsifying documents. But here's the thing. The footage was mine. The drone was flown legally. The audio came from her own backyard. And the kicker, the HOA wasn't even real. She never registered it legally. She never filed articles of incorporation with the county. The bylaws she quoted pulled from an online template and copied word for word from a Florida retirement community. One of Ava's cousins, who worked at the county recorder's office, leaked the info. We posted it on the community board under the title, "The Emperor Has No Charter." That was the tipping point. A petition started circulating to officially dissolve the Sycamore Community Living Initiative and ban Karen from organizing any future neighborhood activity. Within 48 hours, 87 households signed it. Even the people who had previously been on her compliance team stepped away. One of them, a retired mailman named Carl, knocked on my door and said, "I thought we were doing something good at first, just keeping the place tidy." I didn't know she had this in her. I told him, "We all make mistakes, but we don't all destroy orchards to prove a point." Karen wasn't done yet. One night, just before midnight, someone threw a rock through my front window. It hit the bookshelf, narrowly missing the urn where I kept my dad's ashes. I checked the cameras again. This time it wasn't her, but a teenager in a hoodie, likely put up to it. The cops took it seriously, and this time, the mayor called me personally. "We're deeply sorry," he said. "You've done nothing wrong. We're going to shut this HOA situation down officially." And he kept his word. On Wednesday, I attended the City Hall hearing. Karen showed up in a beige pantsuit, fake pearls, and too much perfume. She sat 3 rows behind me and didn't look my way once. The city clerk read through the motion to investigate the SCLA's false legal standing and immediately halt all related activity pending review. Then, in a moment I'll never forget, the clerk held up a single sheet of paper and said, "This is the HOA's incorporation form. It's blank." There was a ripple of laughter, a few gasps. One person clapped. Karen stood up, shouted something about organized slander. The clerk replied, "You can't claim slander when the cameras were your idea." She stormed out. 3 days later, a moving truck pulled up to her house. She was gone by sundown. No one said goodbye. But the orchard wasn't gone. It was rising. Over the next few weeks, we replanted, not just in my yard, but across the neighborhood. 5 new fruit trees on my block, 3 more in the park. The school planted a mini orchard behind the library. People started calling it the Grove Reborn. My father would have loved that. He used to say, "A tree doesn't ask permission to grow, it just reaches for the light." That's what we did. We reached for the light. Part 3. It's funny how something meant to tear you down can become the very thing that lifts you higher. Karen tried to erase my father's orchard. She snuck in at night, cloaked herself in fake authority, and came with chainsaws. She thought destruction would silence me. But from those broken trunks, we grew louder. And what started as an act of vandalism became a fire starter for change I never expected to be part of. The week after Karen moved out, I received an email from the County Land Use and Residential Oversight Committee. Subject: request for testimony, Residential Land Stewardship and HOA Oversight Bill Proposal. They wanted me to appear before a board of city and county officials to speak about what had happened in Sycamore Estates. My story had circulated farther than I knew. Footage from the night cameras had been submitted as part of a policy proposal to regulate non-sanctioned HOA activity in the state. At first, I hesitated. I'm a teacher. I'm used to explaining osmosis and balancing chemical equations, not standing in front of government officials. But then I looked out my kitchen window and saw the new saplings. Some were still wrapped in protective burlap. Others had already sprouted bright green shoots. And I thought, this isn't about me anymore. This is about the people coming next. So I said yes. I brought 3 things with me to that testimony. A photo of the destroyed orchard, taken just hours after the sabotage. A bag of soil, freshly scooped from the bed of the new lemon tree we planted in my dad's honor. The last pair of gardening gloves my father ever wore. I placed them all on the witness table in front of the board. No theatrics, just symbolism. Then I began. I am not a lawyer. I'm not a developer. I'm a teacher, a son, and until last month, the caretaker of a small backyard orchard my father began 30 years ago. Those trees were more than plants. They were memory, heritage, security, and one night, under the cover of darkness, they were destroyed by a person claiming to represent an HOA that never legally existed. She wore a vest, brought a clipboard, told the neighborhood she had power, but she had none, just the illusion of it, wielded like a weapon. She trespassed, she caused thousands in damage, and she tried to silence me with lies and threats. But I had cameras, and I had a community that chose to rise instead of retreat. I'm here because this shouldn't happen to anyone else. I'm here to ask what protects homeowners from fake power, from unregulated compliance scheme, from one person's obsession with control. I paused, looking around the chamber. Then I added, and how do we make sure that roots like the ones in my father's orchard aren't cut down again by someone with a chainsaw and a clipboard? There was silence afterward. The good kind, thoughtful, weighty, Councilwoman Heller, who had helped draft the proposal, spoke next. Miguel, I've read through a dozen reports this month about HOA abuses, parking fines, flag disputes, even patio furniture arguments. But what happened to you is different. It's more than policy. It's violation of something sacred. She tapped her notes. We're moving forward with the bill. It was named the Community Land Stewardship Protection Act, CLSPA for short. It would require all HOA groups to register with the county and disclose governance structures, make it illegal to impersonate HOA authority or enforce non-binding bylaws, classify the destruction of heritage plants and trees on private property as a misdemeanor environmental violation, punishable by fines and potential jail time. It was a start. Back in Sycamore Estates, the change was palpable. The fake HOA signs taken down, the compliance patrol vests discarded, the community bulletin board rebuilt with my orchard photo at the top, and the words, "Let no one cut down what we grow together." That spring, I was invited to co-lead a new initiative through the local school district, Green Roots Education, a partnership between homeowners, teachers, and students to preserve and document urban plant history. Kids came to my yard for science field trips. They sampled fruit, asked about grafting, learned how to test soil pH. I showed them how a single plum pit can carry a story across generations. One day after the students left, I stood alone beside the lemon tree. It was the only surviving original, somehow spared. Perhaps Karen hadn't seen it in the dark. Its branches had started to flower again, new buds, fragrant, defiant. I reached into my pocket and took out the old key my father had left on a string. It had once unlocked the rusted gate to his storage shed. I tied it to one of the branches, a tribute, a thank you, a reminder that even when the gates are torn down, the roots remember. Then came the call from Ava. "You might want to sit down," she said. She had discovered something buried in public record requests filed by Karen 2 months before the orchard attack. They weren't just violations, Ava explained. Karen submitted a redevelopment plan, one that would subdivide your property into 3 parcels. She wanted to flip your land. She even got a rogue investor to tentatively back it. Her plan was to destroy the trees, claim the lot was underutilized ag land, and argue for a variance to install a shared access driveway in modern duplexes. My stomach churned. All that talk about raccoons, leaves, property values wasn't just control. It was greed. She was planning to erase your orchard so she could sell your land, Ava said, and she almost got away with it. I clenched my fists. Almost. We submitted the documents to the city archives. Karen's name was added to the official blacklist of known unlicensed HOA operators, a rare but growing designation. Her attempt to erase me became her own erasure from public trust, from legal legitimacy, from the neighborhood she tried to dominate. And my orchard, it grew. That summer, Sycamore Estates hosted its first ever community harvest festival. Neighbors brought pies made from my new orchard fruit. The local jazz trio played under the fig trees. There were booths for seed swapping, tree grafting, and free garden soil testing. One of the new kids brought his violin and played a song he called Midnight Lemon Tree. The same kids who once walked past my fence now lined up to plant bulbs beside my peach saplings. We gave every family who attended a small paper tag with this quote, "They cut us down, but we grew back stronger." As the evening light dipped low and golden, I stood at the edge of the orchard with a glass of lemonade, watching people laugh among the leaves. Deshaun raised his cup. "To Miguel." "To trees." Ava corrected. "To truth," said Jordan. I raised my cup last, to every quiet thing that stood tall even when no one else was looking. Part 4. The last surviving tree from my father's original orchard stood at the center of my yard, and I began to believe it was watching everything. It had seen Karen circle with her clipboard. It had survived the chainsaw. It had heard my neighbors argue, weep, cheer. It had stood firm through it all. And now, it bore fruit again. Thick yellow lemons drooped from its branches like golden medals, heavy and unashamed. Every time I walked past it, I remembered my father's voice. A tree doesn't fight, it endures. And in the end, it outlives the noise. He was right. Life changed slowly, and then all at once. After the bill passed, after the fake HOA was dissolved, after the last vulture-for-profit developer backed off, people stopped whispering and started building. Not homes, not fences, community. The Sycamore Community Harvest Festival became an annual event. The first year, it was 60 people. The second, nearly 300. By the third year, we weren't just hosting, it was the kickoff for a county-wide initiative, the Urban Orchard Preservation Program, UOPP, and they asked me to be the lead. The work was hard, but healing. I spent weekends visiting backyards, city parks, school gardens, and rooftops anywhere someone had dared to grow fruit in the cracks of the concrete. We documented old trees, tested soil, helped families identify which cuttings came from where. My father used to keep a weathered black notebook of every tree he ever planted. Now I had one too, but this one had hundreds of names. Somewhere in the middle of this work, something unexpected happened. One afternoon, while preparing a grafting demo for a youth center, I got a text from Ava Look, who made the news again. "Check this link." I clicked, and there she was. Karen. She'd resurfaced in another town, trying to run something called a civic garden order, another fake HOA, this time targeting a Filipino family's backyard mango trees. But this time, she didn't last 2 weeks, because someone recognized her from my story. The footage, the lemon tree. They confronted her, filmed it, tagged me. Karen left town again. Some roots never take. And still, the orchard grew. Not just in my yard, but in every neighbor who planted a fig, a pear, a peach. In the students who built sensor kits based on my original design. In the city inspector who wrote new guidelines for heritage plant protection. In the mural painted on the side of the community center, an enormous lemon tree growing through a broken clipboard, crowned with birds. They called it the tree that watched them all. One crisp autumn morning, I was sipping coffee under the lemon tree when a stranger walked up my driveway. Young man, mid-20s, nervous smile. "Excuse me," he said. "Are you Mr. Velasquez?" "I am." He held out a small wooden box. Inside were 4 pale seeds, olive brown, about the size of an almond. "My grandmother passed recently," he said. "She left these. Said they came from a plum tree your father once gave her. I was hoping maybe you could help me grow them again." I didn't speak. I just stepped aside, gestured toward the garden, and said, "Let's plant something." The camera that caught Karen still in place. But these days, it doesn't record sabotage. It catches sunrise, children playing, teens learning to compost, elders sitting in folding chairs under the apricot shade. Every so often, I scroll through the footage and think about what it means to witness. Not just harm, but healing and history. I never rebuilt the fence exactly as it was. Instead, I left one section open, a wide wooden arch where people could walk in, ask questions, take fruit, or just breathe. Above the arch, I hung a sign carved by one of the high school shop students. It read, "The roots remember, but the branches reach for everyone." One last story. This summer, I hosted a small workshop for veterans recovering from PTSD. We sat under the lemon tree in total silence for 5 full minutes before anyone said a word. Then a man, retired Air Force, eyes tired but steady, spoke. "You know, in Afghanistan, I once saw a pomegranate tree grow in a bullet-riddled courtyard. No one watered it, no one claimed it, but it stayed. I used to stare at it between shifts and think maybe things survive for a reason." He looked up at the lemon tree and nodded. "I think this one did too." I smiled. "Yeah," I said, "it was waiting for all of us." If you ever find yourself standing in the wreckage of something you loved, cut down by arrogance, greed, or fear, remember this. They can come in the dark. They can come with chainsaws, but they can't erase the roots if your truth is planted deep. So plant again, grow louder, build shade for the next soul, and one day, someone will sit beneath the branches of what you protected and know they're safe. The end.